So, we've been coming up with treat after treat after treat for you guys here, and this one is no exception. What we have here, is a Coleman Model 18 kerosene heater. And this one was made in Canada. It's really hard to see. You might be able to see with the light here, but it does say Coleman right across here. And it says made in Canada right underneath it. And it is a kerosene radiant heater. And it is really a pretty awesome item. I picked this up. I'm trying to think exactly when. I've had it for probably a bit over a month and a half, something like that. And I got it, and it was cold, and I immediately put it to use. And I did a few things to this that I didn't really record on the channel, so I'm going to kind of go through exactly what it is that I did. But this is really more of a light up, because what I did was actually extremely minor. I got this heater because, number one, I think having a freestanding radiant heater without having to plug into a natural gas line or a propane line is just, to me, is just super cool. And to find one that runs on kerosene is even more so. I hadn't even heard of that up until this point. So I mean, some collectors have been out there collecting for decades. I've been collecting for years, right? So some of this stuff is new to me, but it's still very exciting. So let's see, where do we start with it? I guess this being the Model 18, you may be wondering, well, what other models are there? Well, there is a Model 19. The Model 19 is a Coleman Fuel / gasoline powered appliance. So the 18 is the kerosene, the 19 is the gasoline, and they're both a 2 radiant heater. Now, when I got this one, we're going to do a little detour talking about preheating, because obviously these need to be preheated. And when I got it, it had a bit of charred marks on the front of it, soot, whatever. And you know, that kind of happens when you preheat sometimes. And you know, there was a discussion in Reddit that I got involved in, maybe a little bit too aggressively. But the story is that when you preheat, the guy was saying, well, can I use, you know, Coleman Fuel or gasoline to preheat, because that's just easier for me to come by? And I'm like going, well, you can, but gasoline has a nasty tendency to explode. And, you know, I've had things go off. I'm like 3 feet away, and I light a torch, and then it catches on fire on the desk, and that's not something you want. Those vapors will definitely travel. And so, and the other thing is that it does make for a sooty fire. So I'll probably put up a picture so you can see what the elements looked like when I received them, and they were just a little bit sooty. Now, that also will happen not only with gasoline, but it'll also happen when you use isopropyl alcohol from the drugstore, like the 70% or 91%. Both of those will burn with a very smoky flame and leave a lot of soot on your lantern if you've got a kerosene lantern, or on your radiance if you're so lucky to have one of these. So I always recommend using the denatured alcohol from the hardware store, and it'll say on there, you know, fuel for alcohol stoves or something like that. That stuff burns super clean. It doesn't leave any soot behind, and it's just what you want to use. And definitely don't use gasoline, folks, because that's going to go woof when you least want it to do so, and you can really injure yourself or your loved ones around you. So be real careful when you do that. So, things that I've done since I've got it. Honestly, not a whole heck of a lot. The radiants were wrapped and shipped separately, and they arrived. They are fantastically fragile, so I'm not even going to really take them out to show you, but just understand that they're in there. There is a little bar that holds them at the top, and there's supposed to be a spring that holds them down. On one side, the spring is present. On the other side, the spring is not. And also the little slot where the rotating arm fits in there that holds the radiance down has been wallowed out for whatever reason by maybe a ½ an inch. So I don't really have a solution for that side, and if I just have the spring on one side, it doesn't work. You need to have springs on both sides, and we'll figure something out here eventually. But for right now, I'm just real careful when I move it, but the radiants aren't going to go launching out of there anyway because the bar naturally sits down and holds them in place. So let's see here. Just kind of basic things I did with it, a little bit of cleanup. I did the rat rod treatment to this, right? So I applied the thinned linseed oil, which I've got in my little bottle here still. So applied some of the thin linseed oil to it to bring back a little bit of the surface shine, and so you can actually start to see that the crackle that's underneath here, although it's not really a crackle, it's more like a drizzle. I guess it's probably supposed to be reminiscent of a fire, but it also kind of helps stabilize some of this rust and stuff that we see that's occurring. It had a little dent over here, and when I had this panel off to apply the linseed oil, I just basically hammered it out from the backside and flattened it out so it looked a little better. The back side of this looks pretty simple. Just some, I better be careful not to launch my radiant, so I put my hand here. Just some exhaust vents here on the back side. This top here is porcelain coated, and it's in relatively good shape. It's got a little bit of filiform corrosion underneath it, which you can kind of see here, these little tendrils. So I may or may not elect to send this off to IPE and have it reporcelained. But at the moment it seems to be pretty good shape, so we'll see how it fares over the next few years of use. So the cool thing about this is it's got this giant fuel tank in it. And the fuel tank is held in place by this little clip. And so you basically push the clip down, and the whole tank noisily slides right out. So this basically is now just a burner and the radiance and nothing else, because it's just a big hole that's inside. So that is how that looks. So yeah, this is kind of cool on the end, because it says here, use kerosene. Let's see, it says use kerosene something or coal oil, which is a term you don't really get to hear very often. The generator is actually in really pretty good shape. It's got a gas tip on the end. This is a generator sort of similar in how they put it together, like the handy gas plant. So what I did is that I removed the generator from the valve block, removed the gas tip, ultrasonically cleaned that. I was unable to get the spring loose inside of there, and it has kind of, it's stuck, right? I have full access from either side because it's just basically a hollow tube once these come off. And I'm hoping with several hot, cold cycles that we've run on this thing and since then using it, we'll maybe break it loose a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. The solution after this, which I'm going to reserve for the off season when I don't need a heater, is to set this in a saturated solution of vinegar and salt, which will break down the corrosion. And people say after about a week or so, the generator will be able to come out. So that's pretty good. The tank is brass, so really no worries about rust or anything. I've got quite a lot of kerosene in here because this still is in use. It has a 3-piece cap and a pump just like a regular Coleman lantern that you can pump right up just like that. And again, it had no problems of being stuck or anything else like that. It has a, since it's one of these older ones here, you can see it has the B-type screw down pump cap here, as opposed to the little ones with the use of the clips and everything else. So from there, when I first started it off, it wasn't really burning as well as I would like it to. So that's what led me to kind of go down the cleaning of the generator and the gas tip, which again is pretty cool because since you can pull it out, I stick it in the ultrasonic for 10 minutes, and I think that really helped because boy, she started really shooting fire after that. The other thing in here, and I may have to fly you guys in, so hold on to your hats. Here we go. Just want to point out this air intake right here. When I got it, someone had pried this out in an effort to get more air into it or something like that, and that made it not work really as well as it should. I think it burned way too lean. And I had seen one other person operating, and when their heater was operating, I saw that they had flames coming out of all of these holes here, and mine did not do that. So when I had this cover off, because you can see that screw is very difficult to get a hold of, I unscrewed that and then tapped it back flat, and it's pretty close to being completely on there. You can see that it's still got a little bit of give, so I probably need to pull it out and be a little more diligent at flattening it out, because it certainly didn't hurt the performance. It definitely helped it. So that is something to kind of look out for. And then down here you can kind of see this is where the preheater is, and it has a little. There's a little barrier in between this side and the other side. So I'll usually fill from here until I start to see it fill up this well. And I fill it up pretty good, because the generator there is, as you can see, it's pretty heavy duty, and it's made out of steel, so it needs good preheating. Let me stick you guys back up here for the moment. All right. So that is the basic kind of rundown. The only other thing I've got to talk about here is this little screw on the side here, which this comes right out, and it looks, for all intents and purposes, like a like something that you would use to pump it up, but that is not what that is for. And as close as I can figure, I mean, that is exactly what that type of screw is, because it does have the holes in the end of it that are drilled in there. Can you see that? Yeah, there you go. But what this does is that if you start this heater and you don't have it properly preheated, you're going to squirt a whole bunch of liquid kerosene into this mixing chamber. And it has in the bottom a well where it drains that liquid kerosene off. So if you flood it, instead of trying to figure out how to empty it out and drain it out, you just unscrew this and then it'll drain. So that is my guess as to what that actually does. The only other thing that I did to this is that, I'm going to tip this gently back, this little retaining lever that you can see on the bottom here that holds the tank in once it's properly in place. This was bent in such a way that it was not actually staying up like this. So it came apart really easy. It was just a screw and a square nut. Came off, tapped it, flattened it out, got it to work like it should, and then we were good to go. So that was really all of the work I did to get this to run. So now what we're going to do is that, even though it's like 75 in here, I mean, again, get that in there before we attempt to talk, but Texas never ceases to surprise in the weather in the winter here. So let's see, today is March the 6th, and yeah, it's like 75 degrees, but of course tomorrow it's supposed to get turned cold again, and so we start the cycle all over. So I think what I'm going to do here is probably kind of move this up a bit so y'all can see that pretty good. And I'm just going to go ahead and fill this preheater up. Like I said, I usually fill from this end down here. Oops, I need to screw this down. I usually fill from this end down here, and then wait for it to run down and fill the main cup, so I know that I got both sides filled. And that was probably a little more than I need to put in there, but that's okay. Hopefully not going to catch everything on fire too much. But that is it. But you can see how nice and clean. I'll make sure that my spill didn't go down onto the desk here. It was a little bit overzealous there with the alcohol. Anyway, so you can see it burns super clean, and the flame is very hard to see. Your other isopropyls and stuff like that from your pharmacies or chemist or whatever, you're going to see it has a tendency to burn with a yellow flame, and this burns with a almost invisible flame. This is very pale blue, which is typical of alcohol. So you may be wondering, well, how long do I preheat for? And that's one of the things that's Kind of interesting. So what I do on this is that I usually let it preheat until it is almost completely out. And obviously I'm lighting this on the porch where the light isn't all that great. So how do you actually tell when it's almost completely out? I've found the most reliable indicator that as this gets down to the bottom, the alcohol starts to boil, and it'll kind of fizz and pop and whatever. And as it is kind of bubbling and popping like that, you'll start to see a little bit more action and more yellow flame kind of popping up in there as it's starting to boil. Now, I'm kind of trying to look in here, and it's still super hard to see how low it is, so we're just going to let it keep going until we start seeing that. This thing is pumped up because it's been sitting pumped up on the back porch here waiting for the next bit of cool weather. But that's kind of the whole basic preheating process here. Now, not sure what else I have to say to kind of fill this. I don't really want to let it go down too low, because then of course we got to refill it and start it again. But you can see now, you may or may not be able to see on the camera, that we're starting to see more yellow starting to pop up in here, and that's because it's starting to get down a little bit lower, and it's starting to try to boil a little bit. So it's probably getting pretty close to the point to where, yeah, now you can really see it. See how it's starting to do that? The alcohol is definitely boiling in there, and at this point you're probably good to fire it off, because there's not a lot of alcohol left. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and there she goes. So probably maybe I'll turn the lights off here. We'll just have the backlights of the shop lights on, so you can kind of see what's going, and we'll turn up the fire a bit. She will really rip along pretty darn good. It still has some alcohol that's boiling off in the bottom. Of course, that's going to rapidly dissipate from us, and then it will not have quite so much of this over here. I've found also, when you got a good pump on this, you have to be careful and kind of make sure that you don't exceed the capturing ability of the chimney, because you can get flames to roll out past the top of the ventilator on the top there. So I just kind of have to watch out for that. The other thing to note in here is that how it keeps the preheater hot while it's in operation. Obviously you can see that we've got flames that are shooting up directly up into these radiants, which are obviously causing them to glow. But you're like, well, none of those are pointing down to the preheater. Well, let me show you. There are two sets of burners, and you can actually see that there is a separate burner that is pointed directly at the generator down there that is keeping it nice and toasty. The generator will absolutely glow red after it really starts to get moving. So it definitely provides enough to keep it going. And there is, see, we open up all the way here, and that's pretty much wide open. So this is like a 6,500 BTU heater. I may have dislodged my radiants a little bit, so I'm going to see if I can't gently scooch them over some, so we get them more on where they're supposed to be. But anyway, this puts out nice, warm, wide area heat on it. Unlike something like the Focus 5, take a sit here so I'm not getting blasted in the face with it. Unlike something like the Focus 5, where it's a very, very focused beam, or the 519, which is the little UFO radar dish one, again, very focused beam, and even the Coleman propane catalytic ones that are the big flat panels, they're not quite as focused, but they don't disperse as much heat. This disperses it over a really nice wide area, and it's super comfortable to sit in front of. And your next question is like, what about the smell? You're running kerosene, doesn't it stink? It does not smell one bit. My wife does not enjoy fuel odor when eating dinner, and we use this as a heater outside when we're having dinner outside. And this makes absolutely zero smell. It is impressive how clean burning this thing is. It really is. It does a heck of a job. So all in all, I am super pleased with it. Really like it a bunch. Really would like to add a 4-element, like a Model 2, a Model 4, or a Model 5 to my collection, but really happy with this little 2-element one here. It works really good. But I'm going to probably have to turn this off here because it's getting hot in the shop. So I hope you enjoyed the little walk around of how this one works. Really tiny but powerful. The other thing to note on this, which is kind of interesting, is that let's see, I calculated out on 1 gallon of kerosene burning 6,500 BTU an hour. This will run 21 hours on a gallon of kerosene. So that's really pretty impressive, and I think it's also really makes it quite cheap to run. I'm gonna back this down here a little bit, make sure we're not overdriving things. But yeah, so it'll run a long time on a gallon of fuel, mainly because kerosene is so BTU dense. 1 gallon of kerosene contains 121,000 BTU of energy, so that's why that works out pretty good. So I think I'll stop my rambling there, and we'll just go ahead and close it out. But if you ever see one of these, man, jump on it. I realize that it's probably kind of rare that you'll see one, so if you do see one, let me know in the comments, because they are really cool. They're really awesome, and they're working fantastic many years after their production. So that's it for this one. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep them lit.